Good morning and welcome. Welcome to this service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Charlotte County, also known as UUFCC. I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the land of the Calusa. I am Laura Anderson, the worship associate this morning. My pronouns are she, her. I am a cisgender 66-year-old curvy Caucasian woman with shoulder-length silver and purple hair. I'm wearing black pants and a sleeveless purple shirt, a colorful zuni necklace, which is a traditional fetish necklace made of carved animals, and I have on shark tooth earrings that my father made me 40 years ago. This service is not being streamed live on YouTube this morning. We are still having internet connection issues, but we will try to make it available as a recording on UUFCC YouTube channel after the service. I'm obliged to remind you of a couple of simple procedures this morning. I get to take my mask off while I'm talking. Maybe you'd like to volunteer to talk next week because you get to take your mask off. But otherwise, please wear a mask and continue to be aware of social distancing. We want to keep people healthy. I wish to express gratitude for all who made this service possible. It is good to see Tom Dooley looking well this morning. Thank you to our speaker, Sharon Whitehill, and welcome back to Jim Boyle, our music director. Everyone is welcome here. Whatever your faith or the country of your heritage, you are welcome here. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. Whether you are relatively new to our community or have been an active member for decades, you are welcome here. We are glad you chose this congregation as your place of worship this morning. If you are new to us today, and if you are comfortable doing so, please stand in body or spirit and wave so we can welcome you. Would you tell us your name?
My name's Bonnie Schwartz.
Welcome, Bonnie. Welcome, Dorothy. Please feel free to see one of our greeters if you haven't already after the service if you have any questions. If you would like to learn more about our fellowship, you can visit the website uufcc.org. I hope you find our service meaningful this morning. We will now open the sacred space by lighting a chalice. This ritual is done by Unitarian Universalists throughout the world. Our chalice lighting words this morning are from Reverend Eric Wickstrom. Here, today, in this place, and with these people, may we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. May we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world. May this chalice, K-lit, light our way. Since we don't have the screen up this morning, and perhaps all of us haven't memorized our affirmation, I will say the words and ask that you repeat the phrase after me. Love is the spirit of this fellowship.
Love is the spirit of this fellowship.
And service is its law.
And service is its law.
This is our aspiration.
This is our aspiration.
To dwell together in peace.
To dwell together in peace.
To seek truth in love.
To seek truth in love.
And to help one another.
And to help one another.
Thank you. Jim will now share a prelude.
Good morning. I'm Sharon, and I have the opening words for you this morning, and they are taken from a poem I wrote some years ago entitled Nostalgia. The past, I've heard, is a bucket of ashes, a foreign country. The future, with lights on. A bridge always under construction that stops in midair. I still call Michigan home, even though I'm no longer free to walk into my house or go through the gate. Rather, I feel Thomas Wolfe's "You can't go home again" clutch at my heart. Not because home has changed, which it has, but because I'm no longer the me who lived there and loved there when it was home. 7 volumes failed to bring back his own lost time to Proust, or allay the nostalgia that prodded his pen. The past is an unfinished bridge on the road to a city of gold, slowly turning to dust.
Please join the choir and rise in body and or spirit in singing in the Teal hymnal number 1012, When I Am Frightened.
Frightened, will you reassure me?
We have a long tradition at UUFCC of sharing our joys, sorrows, and life milestones by entering them into the Book of Life. These events are sacred, hallowing the living of our days. Messages can be written in the Red Book at the back of the sanctuary or emailed to bookoflife@uufcc.org. Cheryl will bring up the Book of Life for us this morning. I'm saddened to report this week that June Stark passed away. She was at home with her family. I know that a lot of us have heavy hearts this morning. Hurricanes, flooding, viruses, politicians. There are so many who have lost so much, and there is so much work to do. If I believed in God, I would ask for something, but instead I would like to share a prayer for the second half of life by Darcy Elizabeth Hegvig Lane and Mary Grigolia. Spirit of life, we hold in our hearts all who are in the second half of life, those who aspire from aging to saging. We breathe with those whose hearts have been broken open, that we may continue to grow in love. We breathe with all who have been disappointed, that we may continue to dream. We breathe with all who no longer find delight in the activities of our youth, that we may find new delights. We breathe with those who live in daily pain, that we may find comfort and strength to greet each day anew. We breathe with those experiencing new limits in the body, grieving the loss of what we once could do, held by the body's possibilities still in us. We breathe with those whose fire is running low. May we be open to the spark of inspiration and new life. May our journeys of aging and awakening together be a blessing. We'll have a moment's silence, followed by a meditative hymn on the piano. It is my pleasure this morning to welcome Sharon Whitehill. Sharon is a Midwesterner. She grew up in Minnesota and spent 35 years. Oh, Milwaukee, sorry.
Difference.
Not so much. She spent 35 years as a professor at Grand Valley State University in Michigan, where she taught literature and world mythology. If you know Sharon, you will know that she is especially happy to be done teaching writing to university students, and especially grading all those papers. Now Sharon has time for her own writing and has published poetry and a memoir. She aspires to publish a novel or two as well, and we all have that to look forward to. Sharon was happily married to Jim Malloy for 30 years, and many of you remember Jim for his contributions to this fellowship. Sharon has been a member of the UUFCC since the late 1990s and has been active since then. Sharon is currently active with social justice, worship, the choir. She serves on the board of trustees and leads one of our chalice circles, a small group ministry, and perhaps more that I don't even know about. Sharon has definitely, many times over, earned the title of respected elder. And in this crowd, that's really saying something. Her pronouns are she, her. She has short, dark gray hair with a little silver in front. Today she's wearing a blue polka dot drop waist dress and has on some beautiful glass earrings with purple on them. Sharon?
I'm too embarrassed to do that self-description, so Laura did it for me. Although it is a good thing that we do for those who are visually challenged. These days, when I'm driven down Capitol Drive in the Milwaukee suburb where I grew up, I still look for that shoe store where you could stand on a platform and see the bones in your feet in the X-ray machine. I try to pinpoint the small village library where I stopped after school to stock up on books about horses. But except for the immovable landmarks, like old brick churches, all I see now are yuppie restaurants, glass-fronted buildings with beautiful plantings. Whatever became of that soda fountain in Hayek's drugstore, all the black cows and lime phosphates I loved. There's just no going back to those places I knew when I, like Miss Jean Brodie, was in my prime. And it's so much more than the neighborhood or the house I grew up in that's changed. As I said in the opening poem, what I want, but I could never find, is the self I was then, in the life I lived then. Can you relate? That self may still exist, unchanged in your mind, but in every real way it has altered. I think that might be why, or what we mourn for, most of all when we are feeling nostalgic. Those lost selves of ours who are no more. Another habit we probably share in relation to change is complaining about our aging bodies. It recently dawned on me that what all the ironies and jokes we mention boil down to is loss. We lose our quick recall, common words, place names, people's names. We lose our smooth skin. We lose our hair. We lose the level of energy and endurance we once took for granted, our nimble feet, our good balance. We lose the satisfaction of a good night's sleep, now having to get up several times to use the bathroom. What else do we lose? Our eyesight fails, our hearing diminishes, our joints need replacement. And what do we gain in place of all this? Walkers and canes, endless prescriptions, pot bellies. Well, at least these changes aren't sudden. Most of us have had years to adjust to them and to come to terms with the question, who is that person I see in the mirror every day? This is all leading up to my sermon topic, which is on the theme for this month, change, a concept far too vast for even a month's worth of sermons. So I've decided to bring this one down to personal size by zooming in not so much on change per se as on the stories we tell ourselves and each other about change, about what it means. You've heard this over and over, that resistance to change is built into our brains, that the amygdala, where we process emotions and memories, releases fight or flight hormones in reaction to sudden change, that we cling to what we already know. We fear that what we might lose will outweigh whatever we might gain or whatever improvement we might experience. Even potentially good change, a wedding, a welcome move, a new job, causes us stress. Hamlet, as usual, said it best. We humans would rather bear those ills we have than fly to others we know not of. Think of people you know who've stayed in toxic relationships out of fear of being alone, or people who stayed in jobs that made them miserable rather than lose financial security. They certainly bore those ills they had rather than flying to others they knew not of. How much more powerful then this resistance to change when you're not leaving a negative situation, but faced with losing a positive one. This kind of dilemma will speak to a lot of you here. Not that many years ago, we were congratulating ourselves, so satisfied, so pleased with ourselves, how unique and healthy this congregation was. Everything humming along, not a cloud in the sky. You might even have called us smug. We had arrived at this seemingly ideal place, a lovely plateau we were on, where we could spread out and grow. And it promised to get better and better. But then, out of that blue, cloudless sky, we were hit with a series of shockingly unwelcome changes. Our much beloved minister resigned. Her replacement the following year was, to many of us, ill-suited to lead us. Personal accusations, legal upheavals, unlooked-for expenses, friendships broken, emotional damage, and on top of it all, a pandemic that isolated us one from another. Each of these unhappy changes can beat one down, even beat down a whole congregation. Of course, change didn't end with those events, but more on that later. Meanwhile, I wonder, how often do you consider the compensations that come along even with negative change? Going back to the losses connected with aging, that list of very real afflictions I cited, what possible advantages might there also be to this passage through time? Even if you're one of the few here in this room still in spring chicken mode, what can you youngsters hope for as you too get older? Nothing. No compensation, I can hear you thinking. Well, not so fast. Here's what I've come up with by way of what people gain as they age. You don't have to take off your shoes checking in at the airport. You probably don't need as much sleep as you once did in your spring chicken days. You don't get cavities in your teeth anymore.
Your teeth either.
Assuming you still have your teeth, yes. You get senior discounts in the movies and at performances at museums. That word you want that you can't think of, it may take longer to retrieve than before, but your vocabulary is far more extensive than it's ever been before. And so is your grasp on the meanings of words. You have a brain that has already processed just about everything over the years, and you are a gold mine of knowledge that no younger person can match. And there is this. When bad things happen, you know you'll survive. You know that the pain you feel won't last forever. You and I have been through crises just in these past few years to have lived out that truth. Here's a frequent headline I see, or its equivalent. Suicide replaces homicide as leading cause of death among preteens and teenagers. Read those headlines. When I think of those kids, even the preteen children, in such psychic pain that they take their own lives, I have to believe that part of their despair comes from not having lived long enough to know that they won't always suffer the way they are now. Experience hasn't yet taught them. They will recover in time. Remember your own first heartbreak? Whereas we who have suffered multiple losses already, we don't suffer less, but we know from those experiences that eventually we will move on and heal. We'll go on to have other experiences. And we learn that our losses leave room for new things. That the end of one chapter means the start of another that we haven't yet lived. People can tell you and tell you and tell you that that's true, but it's living it that teaches what truisms can't. Living it is what teaches you to be philosophical about it. So yes, I'm sad now, but more things will happen, and many of them will be good. We readjust. We rebuild. We move on. Last week I came across some so appropriate words. A quotation from Elizabeth Lesser, who is founder of the Omega Institute for Holistic Studies. Here's what she writes. It's human nature to resist change, to run around like 2-year-olds saying, no, 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 when things we didn't order show up. But while unforeseen events are hard to deal with, adding a meltdown makes them harder. My younger sister, she goes on, died recently after a long battle with cancer. Every time I feel the tide of no rising in my chest, I catch myself. I sit down, close my eyes, put my hand on my chest, breathe, and whisper, yes, yes, this happened. Yes, I can face it. Yes, I will feel the loss and not fight the grief. Because, she concludes, I've found that the changes I feared would ruin me have always become doorways. And on the other side, I have found a more courageous, a more graceful self. I like to think about changes like these, and lesser changes as well, as chapters in an ongoing story. This gives me a better, more realistic, I think, perspective. Any change, whether for good or for ill, is not likely to be the end of the story, mine or yours. As long as we're alive, the plot continues. Change, in fact, is what drives that plot. As a writer, I know this, and as readers, you know that too. Change is what makes things happen, what moves any story along. That's as true in real life, isn't it? As in fiction. For example, we were badly bruised here in this congregation these past several years, but we are not broken. We carried on. We rallied our forces. We supported each other. We got professional ministerial help. And we took a hard look at ourselves. We're adjusting. We're rebuilding. And we continue. The same way we're all doing after Hurricane Ian, privately in our homes and organizationally in this building. This, here, now, this change, this is our new reality. Our personal history, like our church history, continues, and the story unfolds. More specifically personal to me, on one of my sleepless nights recently, I spent some hours mentally dividing my life into broad chronological eras. And I found they fell into a pattern of sorts. Conventional settled periods alternating with transitional times marked by change. That's probably pretty typical, but here's what may not be. My own transitional times involve some fairly transgressive behavior. I could say acting out behavior, but I've always wanted to use the word transgressive. That transgressive behavior, I blush to admit, continued well past adolescence. Flaunting conventional norms, that was the name of my game. From defying my father by choosing inferior boys and later an inferior husband, to academic pursuits at a time and in a place where mommies stayed home. And from there, to conduct considered unbecoming to a professor, even if she were divorced. At last, after years of transgressing and rebelling and counseling with the David Butcher, the counselor that I mention practically every time I speak, who was instrumental in creating the happiness classes that we used to teach. After those change-worthy events in themselves, I met Jim, my husband, and I settled down permanently into something I'd almost given up on. A life of intimacy and contentment with someone I loved. Did that good life mean that change had ceased? Or that Jim and I coasted into endless bliss? Hardly. Even a series of chapters aren't the whole book. We moved house. Jim got chronic fatigue and couldn't keep up his honeybee business. Beloved pets died. My friends retired one by one and moved away. And at last, so did Jim and I. We got established in Florida. We joined this UU. We made new friends. I taught the Elderwise classes we used to have here way back when. Jim and I taught those happiness classes I mentioned a moment ago. And now, widowhood, hurricane worries, no more classes, what with my hearing issues and Jim's absence. Friends again, talking about moving away. More reassessment, more change. But still the common denominator, a commitment to moving forward as long as I can. There's something of this outlook in an old Chinese parable. You've probably heard yourself in similar form, but it bears repeating here, I think. It's about a farmer and how he deals with his fate. This farmer has always relied for plowing his fields on his horse, who worked very hard and was very well trained, but one day the horse jumped the fence and disappeared. And all the farmer's neighbors rushed in to express their concern. "Oh, what bad luck for you," they exclaimed. "Oh, not having your horse during planting season, how awful." The farmer listened, nodded his head, and said, "Maybe." A few days later, the horse came home, bringing 2 other horses with it. And the farmer managed to train the other 2 horses also to plow his field, even more quickly than previously. "Oh," the neighbors exclaimed, "you are so blessed. You have 3 horses now. What good luck for you." The farmer smiled and said, "Maybe." Then the farmer gave one of these new horses to his son, but the horse threw him, and he broke his leg. "Oh, what a shame," said the neighbors. "Now your son won't be able to help with the plowing, and it's planting season. Such bad luck." And the farmer smiled and said, "Maybe." And then the emperor came to town and ordered the eldest son of every family into the army, all except the farmer's son with his broken leg. "You're the only one whose son wasn't drafted," cried the neighbors. "You're so lucky." But the farmer only responded, "Thank you, maybe." So good luck, bad luck, maybe, who knows? That farmer's story, like our own stories, ain't over till it's over. Linda Polgreen is an American journalist who grew up in Kenya, Ghana, and Minnesota, And I found myself moved by a recent article she had in the New York Times entitled, What My Father's Death Taught Me About Living. Change, she points out in this article, is even more difficult at a time like ours, with its being dominated by pessimism and cynicism. And she wondered how her wife, who was a hospice nurse, coped with the dying people she dealt with every day. So one night at dinner, she asked her, how do you do this? Well, her wife said, beyond helping with their physical needs and their practical needs, I try to help them normalize their feelings and minimize their regrets and tolerate the uncertainty. There is something so powerful in this idea, Polgren writes, something so broadly useful to modern life. We all want to know what happens next. We all want to fix on some certainty as an anchor in the rough seas of our times. But to tolerate uncertainty, that's to become buoyant, able to bob in the waves, no matter the tide. I thought about those principles for the dying, Polgren goes on, and I realized that they're also rules for the living, a set of maps for navigating a broken world on a dying planet. Tolerate uncertainty, normalize feelings, minimize regrets. Know that people have the capacity to change and connect right up to the end. End quote. In terms of the overall stories of our lives, there's a beautiful passage in The Power of Myth where Joseph Campbell talks about the German philosopher Schopenhauer. And here's another quote from Joseph Campbell about Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer points out that when you reach an advanced age and look back over your lifetime, it can seem to have had a consistent order and plan, as though composed by some novelist. Events that, when they occurred, seemed accidental and of little moment, turn out to have been indispensable factors in the composition of a consistent plot. And that's true, isn't it? But who composed that plot? Campbell goes on to draw an analogy to dreams, how they're composed in the parts of your brain that your conscious mind isn't aware of. And like those dreams, the plot of your life has also been composed out of some combination of your DNA, conscious and unconscious choices, and seemingly random happenstance. Now take that a step further. Think of all the people you've met who have influenced your life. And think about how you have unknowingly influenced each one of them. So that, again, quoting Campbell, the whole thing gears together like one big symphony, with everything unconsciously structuring everything else. It's as though our lives, all our lives, were the features of one great dream, of a single dreamer in which all the dream characters are dreaming too. As though our lives were the features of one great dream of of one dreamer in which all the dream characters dream too. Reminds me a bit of Alice Through the Looking Glass, that concept. When you put it that way, when you see that everything seems to link to everything else, it really does seem quite miraculous. So I encourage you to think of your life, like the life of this church, as a story, or one great dream, if you will. Your environment changes, plans get obliterated, you realize that what you expected never was some kind of cosmic guarantee. But when you finish one chapter, you start in on another. And in the process, you gain perspective. You learn you can manage just about any situation you face. You learn to trust that you'll be okay through each change, no matter how it turns out. Because after all, you've changed too, inside yourself. There's a story the choir sings, "Wo Ya Ya." It's Ghanaian for "We Are Going," whose lyrics fit so well to the ideas I'm talking about that I want to quote them. We would have sung it, but we hadn't time to rehearse it. So here are the lyrics for "Wo Ya Ya." We are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know within. And we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. So, to conclude, my life has taught me that gains are invariably followed by losses, and vice versa. Losses are followed by gains. New homes, new opportunities, new pets, and new friends. Friends, that's you all here, now, for me. And I'm treasuring that. Because yes, that too will end. Which I'm not saying to be a downer, but only to make a realistic point that until that last final change we all face, we will get there. We will adjust. We will rebuild. We will survive.
That was some sermon.
Thank you, Sharon, for sharing your wisdom with us. Please stand in body and or spirit for hymn number 359 in the gray hymnal. Here we have gathered. In our tradition, congregations exist because of the generous support of members and friends. It is our privilege and our responsibility to ensure the health and future of this fellowship. To this end, your offerings support the ministry of this fellowship, whether by pledge or donation. It may be offered online. There are several ways you can give. You can drop your donation in the baskets that are being passed around this morning. You can mail a check to the office. You can use the Venmo app. Payments there are identified as UUFCC offering. If you are here for the first time, please do not feel obligated to give. Your presence is our gift. Number 402 in the gray hymnal. It is our time in the service for announcements, the life of our community. If you would like to have fellowship events highlighted during the service, you can email them to the worship associates at bookoflife@uufcc.org. Tomorrow, the membership meeting that is scheduled to be at 10:30 will be at 10:30, and it will be on Zoom rather than here in person. You can use the universal link. The Immigration Justice Committee is supporting a Venezuelan family who are currently living in a Red Cross shelter, homeless due to Hurricane Ian. The mother is seeking asylum, and the family has some immediate needs. Diapers size 2, 2 car seats, one for a 2-year-old, one for a 4-year-old, a high chair, a booster chair, a stroller. The children have some clothes that have been donated. The mother wears size 10. The children would enjoy books and toys, though. If you can donate any of these items, please contact Betty Barriga or a member of the Immigration Justice Committee. PFLAG will not be meeting today. Several of the leaders of this group have COVID. Watch for an email, though, about future meetings. The Lunch Bunch will meet on Thursday at the Riviera Bar and Grill in Punta Gorda, 5500 Deltona Drive. We can carpool if you want to meet here at the fellowship at 11 or meet at the restaurant at 11:30. And there's an agenda for this lunch bunch. It is time to celebrate or bemoan. Now, I'm not sure what's celebrating and what's bemoaning, but we'll know by Thursday. The 6-week anniversary of Hurricane Ian, okay, and the election. Friday at 6:30, we'll have game night here. Bring your own drink. The Unitarian Universalist Article 2 Study Commission has released a full draft of suggested changes to Article 2 of the UUA bylaws. If you're paying attention, you will realize that these are the draft suggestions to remove our principles and our sources and replace them with this wording. There are several Zoom feedback sessions scheduled in the next few weeks. If you're interested and you don't have those details, I can share those with you. And now please rise in body and or spirit and join the choir in singing in the Teal hymnal number 1007, There's a River Flowing in My Soul.
I have the closing words today, and they are from another poem, a famous one by Robert Frost, which says in 8 lines, which it took me a whole sermon to say. It's called Nothing Gold Can Stay. Gave me the title of this talk this morning also. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf. So Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day. Nothing gold can stay.
Kay, will you assist us again by extinguishing the chalice? And again, I will say part of the litany and you please repeat after me. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of hope.
We extinguish the chalice, but not the light of hope.
The fire of commitment or the warmth of community.
The fire of commitment or the warmth of community.
May these ideals give you courage until we meet again.
May these ideals give you courage until we meet again.
And our last hymn today is number 1057 in the teal hymnal, Go Lift It Up.